Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is Wednesday. We are here to talk about Everton's most improved player this season. I was having a little think a couple of days ago and I thought, what can we sit down and talk about on Wednesday? What can we sort of bring up for conversation that might spark a little bit of debate? And I thought, you know what, let's talk about who has been Everton's most improved player so far this season. Now I just hope that I don't jinx any of this and, you know, the players that I mention in this video don't go on and have a poor run of form, but I think it's important to recognise these players for the improvements that they've made, especially under Carlo Ancelotti. Not just this season, but since Carlo Ancelotti has come into the football club, but obviously we'll specifically look at this season and some of the facts and figures surrounding that. Like I said, you know, it's been a really, really good season so far for Everton Football Club. It's been quite annoying the last couple of days or so. I don't know if anybody else has felt quite annoyed the last couple of days, but watching everybody else play, and Leicester have played a couple of times, and City have played a couple of times, just watching everybody else around us play, when of course our fixture against Aston Villa was postponed last weekend and we don't play in the Premier League until a week today. It's a little bit frustrating seeing everybody picking up points and winning games of football and this, that and the other, and we're just sort of not playing, so we're not dropping down the table, but everyone's making room on us because obviously we haven't got a game. Just makes the game against Leicester City next weekend absolutely massive. It's a massive game for Everton Football Club, just to sense where we are at the moment, really. Nobody's saying we're going to challenge for the title, nobody's saying that we've got a chance to win the title, but it's a massive game considering they're now sitting top of the league, at least until the end of tonight. But I thought, you know what, let's celebrate those performances of those players that 12-18 months ago we might have all sat down here on a live stream and said, he's not good enough, get rid of him, we need to bring somebody else in. If we want to be taken to that next level, we need to have better. And you know what, we do need to improve our squad still, and we still need to bring in players, and we still need to bring in quality, and we still need to bring in depth, because I think beyond our best 11, yes, we've got a couple of players that can fit in there. For example, you know, some people would argue that Alex Iwobi doesn't have a place in our best 11. If you're looking at the start of the season with James, Richarlison and Dominic Calvert-Lewin playing in that front three, then you're looking at Iwobi thinking, right, okay, he's got some quality to come off the bench, but, you know, reality of it is that we need to improve the squad and we need to add more quality. However, there is a load of players. I've written down, you know, 4 names here. There's probably another couple that people could think of, where last season, and, you know, specifically before Carlo Ancelotti joined Everton Football Club, you could have even said that they weren't good enough to be here, that they needed to be sold, that they needed to be replaced, that they were nothing better than a squad player, and now they're starting first team week in, week out, and they're proving themselves to be some of the best players in their position, and not just in the league, but in European football. Certainly, you know, the first 2 that we're going to mention in just a moment. So I thought we'd sit down, I thought we'd talk about it. Look, it's a live stream, of course, as per usual. It is interactive, just me on my own today, so get your thoughts, get your comments in the comment section down below, and we will get involved with as many of them as possible. If you're enjoying, leave a like as well. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Eugene says Brands' future is in Macheri's hands. I assume it is, mate, because ultimately Macheri makes the decisions, and you know, Marcel Brands is a member of the board, so I think Marcel Brands' future is quite safe, but I agree with you, absolutely spot on. Eugene says extra Premier League subs for concussion. I thought that rule was already in place. Thomas says got to be DCL. We're going to talk about DCL in a moment. Sombrero Numero Uno says Keane. Some people were willing to sell him for 5 million. Exactly. Well, Michael Keane's a big name who we're going to mention first. Liam says, hey Cam, love the vids. In my opinion, Michael Keane has been the most improved. In my opinion, he had a shaky start, but now with Carlo, he has become an outstanding centre-back and the best in the league. Well, let's get straight into talking about Michael Keane, because I feel like out of all of the players I've listed, he's been not only the most improved. Obviously there's an argument for Dominic Calvert-Lewin to be the most improved, and we'll go into talking about that. That's the whole reason for this live stream, that's the whole reason for this discussion. But I feel like with Dominic Calvert-Lewin, yes, there was a group of Evertonians, or a few Evertonians who maybe didn't think he was good enough to be at the football club. There was, you know, Evertonians that maybe thought that he needed to leave the club, but I feel like the general consensus around Dom has always been, okay, he mightn't be good enough to start week in, week out going forward, but he's a decent squad player, he can be there. Nobody's ever really spoke about selling Dominic Calvert-Lewin or getting rid of him, or him leaving the club. It's always just been, yeah, he's a decent player, but he's not good enough to be, you know, a Premier League forward of a side that are challenging for European football. Obviously, that shows his improvements and how well he's done, because he is now a centre forward who ultimately It is good enough to lead the line of a team challenging for European football. In fact, I'd even say he's good enough to lead the line of a team who are challenging for the title and going on to win the league. I'm not saying that's going to be Everton, but Dominic Calvert-Lewin is a good enough forward to do that now, whereas a couple of years ago he maybe wasn't that, but there wasn't many Evertonians talking about him leaving the club. It was more so, yeah, he's not good enough, but he's alright to come off the bench and to, run around a bit because of his efforts. But Michael Keane is the first player I want to talk about. Michael Keane was a player who a lot of Evertonians were talking about getting rid of. And you know what? I probably sat here on a live stream or a video and spoke about Michael Keane not being good enough and us needing better and us needing to go out and buy another centre-half. So I don't want to sit here and go, I've never had that opinion. I've never said such a thing, because I probably have sat here and criticised Michael Keane and said, he's not good enough before. But ultimately, like I said, that's the difference for me between Michael Keane and Dominic Calvert-Lewin is Michael Keane has actively had Evertonians saying, look, we need to sell this player. He's not good enough. He's not going to be good enough. We need to get rid of him, make some money back and invest it somewhere else. And Michael Keane, I think, has proven everybody wrong. And not just in this season, by the way. Michael Keane, after the lockdown, in those final 9 games of the season, was Everton's standout player. He was consistently the best player in the side. He was consistently the best player on the pitch. I think he's had maybe 2 or 3 off games since that return of football in June. Up to now, and to say this was a Michael Keane who you never knew what you were going to get for him prior to that. You never knew if you were going to get a decent performance. Sometimes he'd be alright, sometimes he'd be absolutely horrendous. There was just no consistency there whatsoever. And whilst I think that Michael Keane lacked consistency, I think Everton lacked consistency for Michael Keane as well. He was always playing with a different centre-back partnership, so we could never really get that nailed down of who he's playing with and how they play and their strengths and their weaknesses, so we can work on that. He was in and out the team constantly. He suffered with injuries. He's spoken openly about suffering with mental health issues as well. So as much as I feel like Michael Keane's consistency, was down to him needing to improve, I think it was also down to the club and the fact that he was constantly in and out, and when he was in, he was either playing with Zuma or Mina or Holgate, or he was never really in a pair. Whereas obviously what we're seeing now with Michael Keane is he's constantly next to Yeti Mina, and we've all established, I think, as Evertonians, if you disagree with me, feel free to let me know, because this is just my opinion. But I feel the general consensus is that we've all established, including Carlo Ancelotti, that Michael Keane and Yeti Mina are our best centre-back partnership. And that, of course, does bring headaches, and that, of course, does, bring questions, because you've got, a young lad in Ben Godfrey who's come in the summer who's been absolutely outstanding so far, and his natural position's a centre-half, so what does that mean for his future? You've got Mason Holgate, who, of course, the back end of last season, we were all saying Mason Holgate was our best centre-half, even when Michael Keane was doing well. He's not in the team now, but I feel like, for me, the improvements that Michael Keane has made, not just this season, but spanning over the lockdown period as well, going into this season, have just been absolutely astronomical. This was a lad who couldn't string 2 consistent performances in prior to, Carlo Ancelotti coming into the football club. This was a lad who people were, like I said, people were saying he needs to leave, we need to sell him, we need to get rid, he's not good enough, he needs to move on. And to be fair, those shouts at that time were probably warranted. Michael Keane used to look very uncomfortable on the ball. He never looked demanding in the air. His passing range wasn't brilliant. His positioning was poor. He used to be, he used to put in performances that weren't warranted of a player that's playing for a side that are fighting for a European position. And maybe at that time, Michael Keane's performances were sort of a summary of Everton at that time, because under Marco Silva, we weren't fighting for a Champions League place. We weren't fighting at the top end of the league. We weren't 5 points off the top spot in January, were we? Let's be perfectly honest. We were sitting in November, a point or so off the relegation places, having just been beaten by a side who looked destined to go down, thinking, we're going to go down here. If we don't make a serious change, we're going to go down. So I don't think that helped Michael Keane. And like I said, for me, as soon as Carlo Ancelotti come into the football club, you saw the improvements in a lot of players, and that's the whole reason and the whole point is me doing this live stream, is because I think Carlo Ancelotti has had a massive impact on this squad, not only with the players he's brought in, which have been fantastic. Every signing he's made so far has had an impact instantly. Ben Godfrey, unbelievable, brilliant player. Alan, fantastic. Know what he brings. James Rodriguez, don't need to talk about him. We know how good he is. Abdoulaye Doucouré, absolutely outstanding. But it's not just the impact that those new signings have had on a club, because we assumed when we were bringing those players in that they were going to have a positive impact on the club. Otherwise, why would we sign them? The more impressive thing for me is the impact that Carlo Ancelotti has had on the current players who are at the club, like your Michael Keanes, like your Calvert-Lewins, like your Alex Iwobi we're seeing now. But Michael Keane, for me, is the standout. I'm not going to give my opinion on who I believe is Everton's most improved player until the end of the live stream, because I want to talk about all of the players I've got written down and anybody else that anybody might want to suggest in the comment section. But I really do feel like Michael Keane has got to be up there. Like I said, for a player who he was never awful, was he? You know, even during his bad times, Michael Keane, there was some times where he put in a performance and you think, that's what that lad can do, that's what he can bring. He can bring that type of performance, he can play like that, he can be demanding, he can be commanding, he can, command his area, he can get the ball out, he can defend well. But the next week, after putting in that good performance, the next week it'd just be a shambles again and he'd fall to bits and there'd be mistake after mistake. And it was that lack of consistency that Everton were just hit by massively in all parts of the field, and Michael Keane putting in those type of performances just wasn't good enough. And like I said, it drastically changed for Michael Keane after that break in football. And I think it drastically changed for everybody, to be perfectly honest with you. Carlo Ancelotti is being open and he come out openly at the back end of last season and said to every player, look, this isn't good enough. If you want to stay at this football club, you need to come back with a better attitude. You need to come back with more determination. You need to come back with a willingness to win. Otherwise, don't come back. And those players come back on the opening day of the season and we beat Tottenham and we went on an absolutely fantastic run. But I almost feel like Michael Keane had that little bit of a conversation with himself maybe during the lockdown when we went from March to June without playing any football. Okay, the players were still doing training and different regimes and stuff like that, but there'd have been a lot of time for players to reflect and think and look back and think, how do I improve? And I feel like Michael Keane, he'd just come out during the lockdown period, I think, and spoke about how he'd played through an injury, so that suffered him in his first season. He'd also played with mental health issues, and I actually think I remember reading an interview with Michael Keane and where he said he actually sought help from, I think it was his old coach maybe at Manchester United, or it might have been one of his England youth coaches, and he went in, and Baz from Toffee TV referenced this in one of their latest videos talking about Michael Keane, and he went to this coach basically and he said, look, any advice, I want to work on my game, I want to get better. And this youth coach or development coach, whoever it was that had worked with Michael Keane during his development as a player, said, focus on your feet, sort out your feet. Once you know what your feet are doing, you know what the rest of your body's doing then, and once you know when you get the ball where you're going to go with it and how to control your feet, then it makes turning much easier, it makes being in position much easier, it makes covering for players much easier, because you know what your feet are going to do. And he went off and he worked on that during the lockdown, and Michael Keane didn't have a particularly bad season prior to the lockdown. Everton were absolutely dreadful, and those performances from Michael Keane, like I said, were just a summary of how bad Everton were at that time. But like I mentioned before, I think the lack of consistency from Marco Silva towards Michael Keane, in terms of 1 week he was in, the next week he was out, 1 week he was playing next to Zuma, the next week he was playing next to Yeti Mina, the next week he wasn't in the team. I just think that really didn't help him. And he obviously, Carlo Ancelotti come in and he was still trying to establish who was his main centre-backs and who was his main side and who was his best side at that time. And Michael Keane was always one of those centre-halves. It seemed as soon as Carlo Ancelotti come in, it seemed like he sort of put his arm around Michael Keane and said, right, you are my number one, so you're going in there, and whoever comes in is going to go in next to you, be it Yeti Mina, be it Mason Holgate, be it obviously Jared Branthwaite in the lockdown period. They're coming in next to you. You are the main centre half. And I've spoken about this effect that Carlo Ancelotti has had a number of times on players at the football club, and I want to mention it again because the improvements of Everton players are down to themselves. They really, really are. And I don't want to get this twisted, and I don't want to sit here and underappreciate the players' efforts and willingness to improve. I'm not going to sit here and say Dominic Calvert-Lewin's the player he is because of Carlo or because of Big Dunk. Michael Keane's only improved because of Carlo Ancelotti. These players have improved because they've wanted to improve. These players have improved because they've gone away, be it in lockdown, be it at the end of the season, be it just after the game, which it seems like has done with Alex Iwobi in the last couple of weeks. It seems like he's gone away after a certain performance and thought, I need to be better than that. I need to seriously improve, or I'm not going to get anywhere near this team. I remember Seamus Coleman coming out after the Wolves result last season in lockdown. We played Wolves at Molineux, and we were just absolutely dreadful. We got bullied off the park. It was awful. We got battered. And Seamus Coleman come out at the end of the game, and he couldn't have made an excuse. But Seamus was, I think it's fair to say, known at the time, and maybe still is by some fans as a player that, when we'd get beat or when we'd put in a bad performance, he'd come out to the media and he'd say, oh, we need to look ourselves in the mirror, we need to do better, this, that and the other. And it was always the same sort of conversation, the typical, it wasn't good enough, we need to improve this, that and the other. And Evertonians had gotten sick of that. At that point, be it from Seamus Coleman or any other player, we'd got sick of these players coming out at the end of defeats and saying, yeah, we need to look ourselves in the mirror, we know it wasn't good enough, this, that and the other, and then coming back the next week and putting in the same performance. And just, again, slightly off topic, but if you look at that Wolves performance compared to the Wolves performance last time out, it shows how much Everton have improved. But that interview from Seamus Coleman at the back end of last season, after we were absolutely blathered by Wolves, it seemed different. It seemed like there was more intent. He come out and he practically said within a minute and a half, that's not good enough for this manager. And if we're going to put in performances like that for this manager, then we may as well walk in the summer, because he ain't going to put up with that. Now, Seamus may well have said that off his own chest and said that off his own emotion, but I can't help but feel Seamus Coleman has said that because he's either been told by Ancelotti as well as the rest of the side, or he's been told by David or somebody on the coaching staff, look, if you're putting in performances like that, don't bother coming back, because that's not good enough for a team that are fighting for the Champions League. So, either sort it out or move on. And like I said, I feel like every player that we've spoken about, or we will speak about today, including Michael Keane, there's been that period, be it in lockdown, be it at the end of the season, where that said player has gone, you know what, I need to do more here, I need to improve, I need to be better. And that is important to be said, because Carlo Ancelotti has a massive impact on this. And I want to talk about Carlo Ancelotti's impact on this, but it is important to understand that the players have actively gone out and made an improvement themselves. On to Carlo Ancelotti. We will go back on to talking about Michael Keane in a moment. On to Carlo Ancelotti. One thing we've noticed since Carlo Ancelotti's come in as Everton manager is he's constantly behind these players. He's constantly bigging them up, and he's constantly talking them up to themselves, to the media, to other people around them, and in interviews. There's been a number of occasions where Carlo Ancelotti has come out and compared Dominic Calvert-Lewin to some of the strikers that he's worked with in his time. Now, bearing in mind, Carlo Ancelotti has worked with Cristiano Ronaldo, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Robert Lewandowski, I believe, at Bayern Munich. He's worked with some of the best strikers ever to have graced this planet. And one of the first things he did when he come into Everton was put his arm around Dominic Calvert-Lewin and say, you're up there with the best I've ever worked with. Now, whether Carlo Ancelotti believes that or not, whether Dominic Calvert-Lewin believes that or not, which I honestly do think they do, but whether Carlo Ancelotti believes the words coming out of his mouth, it doesn't really matter, because what he's doing to Dominic Calvert-Lewin is he's seen the potential that he's got. He's seen that there's room to improve. He's seen that he can be one of the top strikers in the world, and he's gone, let me put my arm around this lad who may be a little bit, shy of confidence at the moment, maybe a little bit, maybe struggling a little bit because the team isn't playing well or because he's not getting opportunities. Let me put my arm around this lad and tell him, you are amongst the best I've ever managed. Now, that comment was laughed at the time. It was laughed at by the media. It was laughed at by opposition fans. It was laughed at by Evertonians. Some Evertonians turned around and said, yeah, all right, he's nowhere near Zlatan Ibrahimovic in his prime, or Calvert-Lewin as good as Ronaldo. Nah, you're having a laugh, this, that and the other. And some Evertonians may back that point up today. In Zagni's another one. Noah says Carlo was made don't watch videos of Filippo and Zagni. Here's another one. And you might sit there and you might think, yeah, that's a load of tosh. There's no way Dominic Calvert-Lewin is on that level. But look at the improvements Dominic Calvert-Lewin has made since Carlo Ancelotti put his arm around him and said that. Look at the improvements that he has made. He's turned round now towards the back end of last season and this season. He scored 11 goals in 14 goals in 19 games in all competitions. He was the top goal scorer right at the start of the season. He's already scored 2 hat-tricks so far this season. He's got a leap and that has been compared to Cristiano Ronaldo. He's had Pep Guardiola come out and saying he's the best header of the ball he's seen in a long time in football. And Dominic Calvert-Lewin has done all of that improvement based off of the confidence that Carlo Ancelotti has given by putting his arm around him and saying, look, you are amongst the best. He probably hasn't said you're the best striker I've ever worked with, but when he's been asked in interviews after defeats or after bad performances, what's the difference between this Everton team and, you've managed great teams in your past, Carlo, you've managed world-class players, so why this Everton side? And Carlo is a very, very experienced manager with the media. He's been around a long, long time. He knows how to play the media. He knows which questions to answer. He knows how to answer them. So he was never going to turn around and go, yeah, I've worked with loads of absolutely world-class players. These players aren't that good, but they're all right. What Carlo Ancelotti did was come out and say, these players are amongst those players that I've worked with. Dominic Calvert-Lewin ain't that far off from Lewandowski. He ain't that far off from Inzaghi. He's one of the best I've worked with. And like I said, whether he believes that or not is irrelevant really to this conversation, because what Dominic Calvert-Lewin's done is gone, bloody hell, this fella who has worked with everybody, won everything, Champions Leagues, league titles, domestic cup competitions, World Best Manager Awards, one of the most accredited managers ever to walk the earth, potentially the most accredited managers to ever walk the earth in terms of a whole scale with European football, certainly. He's looked at Carlo and said, he said those words about me. He said I'm up there with the best he's ever worked with. I need to go out now and I need to work hard to prove that. I need to work hard to pay back that, respect and that trust that he's given in me. Carlo Ancelotti done that a few months later with Seamus Coleman. He was asked about captaincy at the club and the captains that he's worked with and where Seamus Coleman fits, and he said, look, Seamus is not out of place with the captains I've worked with. He's not out of place with Maldini and some of the best captains. Now, do I think Seamus Coleman's as good of a defender as Paolo Maldini? Absolutely not. Obviously not. But Carlo Ancelotti's coming out and he's given the confidence to those players by saying, you're not out of place in this unbelievable list of players I've managed. Now, whether he believes that or not, what he's doing to those players is giving them a load of confidence to improve their game and to go out and prove that they can be one of the best players in the Premier League, prove that Dominic Calvert-Lewin can be one of the best goal scorers in the league or in Europe, prove that Michael Keane can be one of the best centre-halves in the league. And what's happened since Carlo's come out and said those comments? What's happened since he's instilled this, we are good enough, we are good players, we can improve, we need to be better, we need to be achieving these things? You're seeing the improvements of these players. Because it's all well and good sitting here saying, we've had a brilliant transfer window, we brought in James, Alan and Decore and Godfrey, and they've had an instant impact. And that's right, we absolutely have. But we could have said that in previous years. We could have said that about Marco Silva's first transfer window. We brought in Luca Dean, who's been excellent. We brought in Richarlison, who's been excellent. We brought in Yeti Mina, who's been solid. You could say that about Marco Silva's first transfer window. One thing you couldn't say about Marco Silva is he didn't improve the players that were at the football club. He didn't come in and he didn't make Michael Keane a top quality defender like Carlo Ancelotti has done. He didn't make Dominic Calvert-Lewin a top quality centre forward like Carlo Ancelotti has done. So a lot has to be said about that. And the reason I brought that point up and the reason I've just spent 10-15 minutes rambling about that, and you're probably thinking, Cam, get back onto the point of the live stream, mate. You're talking about the most improved players, not why Carlo Ancelotti's boss, because we all know he's boss. But the reason I brought that up was because I think he's done the same with Michael Keane. Now, I haven't seen a quote from Carlo regarding Michael Keane. I haven't seen him talking about him like he's, one of the best defenders he's ever worked with. But I would not be surprised if Carlo Ancelotti had gone into Michael Keane or spoken to Michael Keane and said, look, you aren't out of place with the centre-backs I've managed in my career. You're not out of place with Thiago Silva. You're not out of place with John Terry. You're not out of place with again, Maldini or any of these players. And you might think I'm silly saying that. And you probably are right to think I'm silly saying that. But the improvement in Michael Keane shows that Carlo Ancelotti is putting trust in him. And one thing he's done, like I said, which hadn't happened with Michael Keane before, is he's come in and he's gone, you're my number one centre-half. You are the player that's going to lead this team. You're the player that's going to be in here week in, week out. You're the number one. It'll be whoever plays next to you, not a you playing next to somebody else. And we've seen that with Michael Keane. We've seen the consistency now. He's got that consistency. Before that, we saw the odd performance where he showed his potential, but the next game he was dreadful. Now we're seeing game after game after game after game where Michael Keane is turning up, not only putting in an unbelievable defensive performance, but is now a threat in the opposition box going forward. How many goals did our centre-half score prior to Carlo Ancelotti coming in? In fact, how many goals did anybody score in this Everton team other than Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison prior to the lockdown period or even this season? Very minimal, very minimal. Now, Michael Keane within January, he's on 4 goals so far this season. Yeti Mina's got a couple as well. Not only is he a threat in the opposition box, defensively, which ultimately is his job, and, you know, the job that he's paid for. He's not paid to score goals, although, it's fantastic and it's important that he does do that. He's paid to be a really good defender. And Michael Keane is showing this season so far, and certainly after the lockdown period, that he has become a very, very, very good no-nonsense defender. And I think Michael Keane coming out and saying he's worked with a youth coach to improve his passing, he's worked with a youth coach to improve his feet and how he uses his feet, I think you can see that. Light and day, you can see that. His passing range now is absolutely unbelievable. Look at the pass for Dominic Calvert-Lewin in the game against West Ham in the Carabao Cup. He just dinks it over. It's a fantastic pass. It's an absolutely lovely ball onto Dominic Calvert-Lewin's feet. It's brilliant. It's absolutely exceptional. The passing range that we've seen in recent weeks from Michael Keane, which might not have led to direct goals, but they've certainly been put on players' feet. His passing has been absolutely outstanding. Like I said, he's confident on the ball now. He doesn't get the ball and he doesn't panic. He doesn't get the ball and he doesn't kick it away, and he doesn't get it and think, I don't want this, so I'm giving it to somebody else. He doesn't do any of that. He gets the ball and he's confident with it. He's cool, he's calm, he's collected. He thinks, right, okay, if there's a pass on here, I'll play that pass. If there's a long pass that's going to create an opportunity, I'll play that long pass that's going to create an opportunity. If there's not, I'll keep hold of it. I'll move forward. We've seen Michael Keane coming into the midfield, bringing himself forward almost until the edge of the opposition area. In fact, we've seen that on 2 or 3 occasions so far in the last couple of weeks where Michael Keane has just bulldozed the ball forward because he either hasn't had the pass on or he doesn't want to just lump it up forward. So he's bulldozed the ball forward. He had a chance, I think it was against Arsenal in the opening 5 minutes of the game, where he just moves the ball up to the edge of their box and he hits it, and it's literally millimetres away from the post. It'd been an absolutely outstanding effort and goal if it had went in. But he moves the ball forward now. He doesn't want to get rid of it. He doesn't just kick it upfield. He's not worried with the ball at his feet. He's confident. And Michael Keane knows that he can either play a pass, he can play a long ball, or he can say, you know what, I'm just going to keep hold of it, or I'm going to go myself. I'm going to bulldoze myself past everybody here because I'm going to create something. And that again is showing the confidence, and that again is showing the improvements that he's made with the ball at his feet. As well as that, like I said before, solid defensive partner next to him. It's vital that we have consistency throughout this team. If you want consistent performances, you need consistent tactics, you need consistent partnerships on the field, be it centre-half, be it 2 strikers, be it wingers, be it number 10 and a striker, be it your winger and your fullback. You need partnerships on the field. And I'm not saying that, Everton should stick with the same starting 11 week in, week out, and that's it. Obviously, we're going to need to change it. Different games ultimately require different formations and different playing styles, etc., etc. But Michael Keane is definitely benefiting from having Yeti Mina next to him and knowing full well every single week, other than, excluding any injury or suspension, Michael Keane knows full well when he goes into Finch Farm on a Monday after the game on a Saturday that Yeti Mina will be playing next to him next week, that Yeti Mina will be playing next to him the week after. Like I said, unless there's an injury or a suspension, Michael Keane knows that Yeti Mina is going to be playing next to him, and that helps them build in training. That helps both players to look at each other and think, right, okay, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? How do I need to improve? Where can you improve? And that ultimately helps the performances on the pitch. And we're seeing that. We're absolutely seeing that. So Michael Keane is somebody that I want to talk about firstly, because for me, I just think he's been absolutely outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. Not only this season, but since the lockdown period. He's showing himself to be, for me, the best centre-half in the country. Don't care what anybody says. You can come at me with your this, that and the other. Not bothered. He's the best centre-half in the country at the moment. He's playing with confidence. He's playing with fight. He's playing with energy. And he's playing with leadership as well. And he's taking control, he's taking responsibility, which is something that he wouldn't previously do. Anyway, let's get into the live comments then before I get on to my next player, my next mention. If you're not enjoying, by the way, so far, please do hit that like button. If you could share the live stream as well, it would mean a great deal to me. Try and get as many people in here as possible to get involved with the conversation. John Hunt says, anything on JP Gabaman? Sorry, off subject. Nothing new, mate. Nothing new, to be perfectly honest with you. Bit of a strange situation considering Carlo did come out about 2 months ago and said that he'd be ready in November at some point. Went out 2 months later. He has also come out and said there's no pushback to his injury, so I'm not really understanding of that, unless Carlo's just doing what he did with James and doing what he may do with other players for a little bit and saying, right, okay, you know what, we don't need to rush you back. John Philip Gabaman hasn't played a competitive game of football, I think, for 2 years for Everton. I think he's only featured 3 times for us, a couple off the bench and one start, so it will be ridiculous for us to rush him back. Why he's not being pictured insane or there's no update, I don't know, but maybe they're just trying to keep it on the down low until he's at a stage where, he can come back. Maybe the club have looked at it and gone, look, as soon as we release a picture of him at Finch Farm, as soon as we release a picture of him working, there's going to be questions as to when can he start, and he doesn't need that pressure on him. But, ultimately, I don't know. Luke says this may be a bit of an odd shout, but in my opinion, Pickford, he had a shaky start, but has been quality recently and looks nothing like Pickford from last season. Yeah, well, look, we can talk about Jordan Pickford as well. Again, I agree. Jordan Pickford recently has been very, very solid. And again, another player who has come out and spoke openly about seeking a psychologist in football to try and improve his performances and try and, ultimately sort of calm things down and improve, and he's doing that. He's absolutely doing that. And I also think having somebody like Robin Olsen with the experience of Robin Olsen on the bench to sort of guide him is helping Jordan Pickford as well. But you're absolutely spot on. Certainly in recent weeks, he's done nothing wrong. He's done absolutely nothing. And there'll still be shouts for him not being good enough and needing to improve and needing to get better. And that's fair enough. That's absolutely fair enough. I'm not clouded by a couple of decent performances by Jordan Pickford. I think he needs to show that consistency like Michael Keane has done. But he's improved, and that's all you can ask. Which Find the General Phil says, 5 million for Keane, are you for real? Well, some people were really seriously wanting Michael Keane out of Everton Football Club, less than 24 months ago. Eugene says Everton needs a new backup striker like Diego Costa. Wormy says, hey everybody, how's everyone doing? Luke says, we're in contact with Xerxes on loan, but I don't know if he's good enough for the first team. Yeah, he wouldn't start, I don't think. He'd be back up behind Dominic Calvert-Lewin, which is ultimately what we need, certainly with Ellis Sims going out on loan today. If you haven't heard the news, it is something that we're going to cover in Friday's weekly news roundup, but Everton confirmed today that Ellis Sims will spend the remainder of the 2020-2021 season at Blackpool on loan. Just briefly on it, I think it's a good move for everybody, to be perfectly honest with you. I know there's now worries about the strength in depth up front, but let's be honest, Ellis Sims was never going to play in the Premier League, never going to play. Carlo Ancelotti doesn't even trust Anthony Gordon, who's been in and around the first team for a year now, and as that Premier League experience, he doesn't bring him on unless absolutely, necessary. So Ellis Sims, even though he's had a couple of bench appearances, was never going to get in this Premier League team. And even if, like we seen against Wolves, practically we had Dominic Calvert-Lewin not ready to play, we had Cenk Tosun not ready to play, and still, I don't even think Ellis Sims was on the bench, or if he was, he didn't feature in the game. We played with 2 false nines. So I think it's a right move for the players' development. I think it's the right move for the club, because what's the point in him playing under 23s football or sitting on the bench when he can go and play in a league where he's going to get a lot more experience, it's going to be a lot more competitive, and it's going to be a lot tougher for him, and I think that's absolutely right. Phil says, hey, Wormy says, Eugene, Diego Costa's agent. Are you Diego Costa's agent? Official Kieran, what's happening, Kieran? He says, Iwobi's been the most improved this season, in my opinion. Sigurdsson is starting to improve a lot. He says, who the fuck is this like this? Yeah, I agree, absolutely. Iwobi is a player that we are going to talk about in a moment. I agree with Sigurdsson. I think he's improved. I think he's started to put in better performances, but I still don't really think he's good enough. But he's probably going to stay, isn't he, because of that experience, and I think Carlo Ancelotti likes him. And who am I to question Carlo Ancelotti? Eugene says Everton needs to sign Robin Olsen on a permanent. Keane says he deserves a lot more game time for Everton. Carl says, hello, Cam lad, Iwobi has been great, but DCL and Keane have been world class. Also, Michael Keane never had a consistent partner next to him. It was Mina, Coleman at centre back at times, and Holgate. Hope you're well and keeping safe. I'm well, mate. I hope you're well as well and keeping safe. No, I agree, spot on. And the reason I also wanted to do this live stream and bring this topic up is because of the comments. There's not often where you sit down halfway through a Premier League season, or even at the end of a Premier League season, and you ask the question, who was Everton's most improved player? And there's not a unanimous decision. Many of times in the last few years or so, you could ask fans at the end of a season or at the start of a season, who do you think's been the most improved player? And 99% of fans would say the same name, be it Richarlison or Holgate or Mina or whoever. Most fans would say the same name. Now this season, fans, some are thinking Keane, some are thinking Dominic Calvert-Lewin, some are thinking Iwobi, some are thinking Pickford, and ultimately, I think that just shows the the vast improvement of the squad. We'll do a couple more then, and then I want to get into talking about my next name on the list. Eugene says, what do you think of Tom Davies in the Premier League this season? I haven't got as radical of an opinion, to be honest, on Tom Davies as a lot of people have. I think he's done a job. Is he as good as Alan? Absolutely not, but we knew that anyway. I don't think he's particularly done anything wrong, to be perfectly honest with you. He's been okay. Sometimes he's put in poor performances. Sometimes he's needed to be better. But what's the alternative? Cal says, a lot of us said that Zuma was the one that made our defence click in 18-19, but it was Keane. Noah says, I think Mina has to go. I don't think Mina has to go. I think Mina's in there for arguably the most improved player, and we'll talk about him as well. Cal says he's been good this season. Toffee Blue Blood Army says, Iwobi was shite now. The level he's at is most improved. Fair enough. He says, will DCL and Alan play on Wednesday? Potentially, mate. Potentially. Obviously, we'll hear from Carlo Ancelotti prior to the game on Wednesday. Might even hear from him prior to the FA Cup game, to be honest with you. I don't know if he's actually he has to do a press conference for that game, but he did do one, I believe, for the Rotherham game, so he may well come out and do a press conference for the game against Sheffield Wednesday, and if he does, I'm sure we'll hear an update on where, you know, the likes of Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Alan are at in terms of their fitness. We'll read a couple more then, and then we'll get back into it. Noah says, hope so, and Cal says, of course, DCL isn't the best striker he has worked with. He's worked with Niasse. Well, there you go. Anyway, let's get back into it then. I will get back into the live comments in a moment. Afternoon, everybody. If you are enjoying, please do hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe as well. It does only take a second if you're new to the channel. Please leave a like, share the live stream. Let's try and get as many people involved in today's one as possible. But anyway, back on to most improved players. So there you go. Just spoken about Michael Keane. Like I said, I will give my opinion on who I think is the most improved player at the end of the live stream once we've gone through everybody. Next up, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Probably everybody's go-to when this question is asked, who is Everton's most improved player? It's very easy to go to Dominic Calvert-Lewin. And it's not very easy to go to Dominic Calvert-Lewin because there's not been anybody else that's improved. It's very easy to go to Dominic Calvert-Lewin because he's been absolutely exceptional so far this season, and he's been absolutely exceptional since Carlo Ancelotti has come into the football club. Maybe I should change the name of this team to who has been the most improved Everton player under Ancelotti, but we'll go with this season because it just sounds better. But Dominic Calvert-Lewin, 19 games, 14 goals so far this season. Even in the games that he isn't scoring, he's still putting in performances which makes you think, you know what, that's worthy of a man of the match. He's getting about the pitch, he's working hard, he's throwing challenges in, he's fighting, he's playing even through injuries, he's playing when he's struggling, even when there's games that he's had no service, even when there's games where he's looked like he's struggled, he's still looked very, very, very good. Look, this is a player who, again, prior to Ancelotti, and maybe even you could say prior to Marco Silva's last season, to be fair, because I think ultimately, Marco Silva, I don't think you can sit here honestly and say Dom was awful, at the beginning of last season, because he did score, some important goals, and under Marco Silva, he was decent. He wasn't as good as he is now, nowhere near as good as he is now, but there was still vast improvement. So, prior to Marco Silva, certainly when he was brought in by Ronald Koeman, and sort of like I said, prior to that last season under Silva, Dom was a striker who a lot of people wrote off. Championship player was thrown about a lot, and again, like I said, at that time, probably a warranted comment. To be fair, it's been thrown about more recently, which I think is baffling, but at the time, like I said, 2018-19 season, when he wasn't getting goals, when he was in the team and he was working hard, but he was working hard in the wrong areas, he wasn't getting into the box, that shout was probably warranted. And that was Dominic Calvert-Lewin's biggest issue. He never really had an issue with his work rate. He never had this issue with his, his willingness on the pitch. His issues were always either his ability on the ball and his goal-scoring ability, which obviously is a massive issue if you're a striker, and his work in the wrong position. He was always attracted to the ball, Dom. And I don't know whether this was because he did have a lot of game time off the bench. He come off the bench an awful lot. He didn't have an awful lot of starts. Obviously, Tosun come in and in January and was in and out the team and playing. But I don't know whether it was because of that or because Dom just wasn't really a natural striker. Listen, Dominic Calvert-Lewin come into Everton Football Club as ultimately a player that had played central midfield for a large part of his career. He was moulded into playing as a striker, but let's not forget he was played as a right wing back under Ronald Koeman, he was played as a winger for a lot of times, and it didn't take rocket science to realise Dominic Calvert-Lewin ain't a winger. It really didn't take rocket science to realise that, but it seemed like the Everton managers at the time didn't quite understand that he wasn't a natural winger. I think they thought he's quick, he's big, he's physical, he's tall, okay, might be good enough to play up front, but throw him on the wing, and that wasn't the case for me with Dom, and ultimately, we've seen that very recently with Dominic Calvert-Lewin's ability in the air, with Dominic Calvert-Lewin's leap, and with Dominic Calvert-Lewin's scoring ability recently, that he's not a player that you can afford to have on the wing just sort of throwing balls into the box. Because if he's throwing balls into the box, who's on the end of them to head them in? It needs to be Dom, and that's what we've seen very recently. But at the start of his Everton career, we didn't see a lot of that. What we saw was Dom being pushed to the wing, or, like I said, working hard, but working hard in the wrong positions, getting drawn towards the ball, coming into the centre midfield, almost doing what we saw Gylfi Sigurdsson doing against Wolves last time out, which was starting as a striker, but coming into the midfield and trying to pick up the ball, dropping too deep, not working hard in those areas, not getting behind defenders, not running past the last man, not getting on the end of headers, because whenever the ball was crossed in, he was always 5 or 10 yards outside the box because he'd tried to do the work in the midfield. And we saw that from Gylfi Sigurdsson, because Gylfi Sigurdsson is a midfielder and he was playing in a false 9. But when we were seeing it from Dominic Calvert-Lewin, it was much more frustrating, because we weren't under the impression that Dom was a midfielder playing out of position. We were under the impression that Dom was a young up-and-coming striker. So when you're seeing a young up-and-coming striker doing all of his work outside the box and not running behind the last man and not getting on the end of headers and not ultimately scoring enough goals, it's very, very frustrating. And that's where the shouts for, Dom not being good enough and needing to be replaced and being a championship striker, that's where they come from. Dominic Calvert-Lewin this season, and again, I attribute a lot of this down to that lockdown period where we went from, the end of March to June without any football. One thing you notice from Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and he'd improved on this an awful lot prior to lockdown, by the way. I think Duncan Ferguson coming in, before Carlo Ancelotti had come in, was a massive help to Dom. And I think Duncan Ferguson, he got a hold of Dominic Calvert-Lewin at the start of last season, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't think it was particularly during any point. I think it was at the start of last season he got a hold of Dom and said, look, you need to be working harder in the positions that a striker needs to be working hard in. You need to be, you need to be getting in the right areas. You need to be scoring the goals effectively, not working hard to create the goals, because you're not the creator. And look, like I said, Dom massively improved on that, but he was still not that level that he is now. He wasn't that striker that you thought, you're good enough to take us to a European place, you're good enough to be our striker playing in a European competition last season. He was doing well, but you almost felt like we need somebody a little bit better, and maybe he's a decent enough substitute or replacement to come off the bench, but he's not a decent enough player to start week in, week out. And again, like I've mentioned with a lot of these players and a lot of Everton players in the past year, you look at that lockdown period between March and June, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin was one of the players who you always seen working hard, whether it be in his house, doing extra fitness work, be it sit-ups, be it ball work, be it work on the treadmill, be it strength and conditioning. He was always that player that you knew, even after he'd finished doing what he needed to do with the club and the club's training regimes, etc. Whereas some other players maybe thought, right, okay, I can have a break now, I can go and watch a little bit of Netflix, I can go and have a scan, I can play on the PS. Dom was that player who thought, no, I want to continue to work hard. I want to be, from the moment I open my eyes till the moment I close my eyes, I might have the odd break or the odd hour chill time in the night, but for the majority of that day, I'm working. I'm working on my strength and conditioning, I'm working on my fitness, I'm working on being stronger, I'm working on my ball control, and you're seeing that during that 3-month period. And it was no surprise that, okay, he wasn't unbelievable when he come back after the lockdown. He did have a little bit of a dry spell, whereas prior to the lockdown, he was absolutely exceptional, certainly from Carlo Ancelotti coming in too. When football was suspended in March. But that work that he had done in the lockdown didn't quite come off for him towards the back end of last season, because like I said, we were poor, we were very inconsistent, we weren't getting much opportunities. Richarlison was the one scoring the goals, and Dom was he was working very, very hard, but it wasn't great for him. It wasn't great for him. But you can see that he then looked at that at the end of the season. He'd obviously been in that room when Carlo Ancelotti had said to them, look, 12th finish in the Premier League ain't good enough, so if you're not going to work hard, don't bother coming back. And what he'd done in that lockdown period, he'd extended for the 2 or 3 weeks after the end of the season as well. And he'd worked hard, and he'd fought, and he'd battled, and he got himself to a condition where he was good enough to go again. He come back, I think he scored in the first pre-season friendly against Blackpool, and then we saw it instantly on day one. His goal against Tottenham, the leaped about 5 foot in the air. We seen the ability of Dominic Calvert-Lewin. We seen how good he can be. He then went on a run of 3 or 4 games where the lad couldn't stop scoring. He was scored an hat-trick against West Brom the very game after. I think he scored in the game against Palace after that as well. Might be wrong there. He scored an hat-trick against West Ham in the league. He amassed this, list of goals where he was on 9 goals before the Merseyside derby or something like that. He was top goal scorer by quite some distance, and if you take away penalties, he was top goal scorer by a long stretch. Son was up there and maybe Salah was up there, but these players had scored 4 or 5 penalties already in the opening 6 weeks of the Premier League. So Dominic Calvert-Lewin hadn't taken 1 penalty. He'd scored 9 goals from open play. We go into the Merseyside derby. Obviously, he scores the equaliser. Absolutely fantastic goal. Ball comes into the box and he leaps like a salmon, and that's where the comparisons to Cristiano Ronaldo started to sort of come out to play. People looked at Dominic Calvert-Lewin and went, hang on, this lad leaps like nobody we've seen before. Certainly nobody since Cristiano Ronaldo. He's up in the air, he's beating everybody for headers, and yet you had the mainstream media who were coming out saying, if Virgil van Dijk could have been on the pitch, he wouldn't have scored that. If Virgil van Dijk would have been on the pitch, he'd have been sent for an hot dog, mate, in the main stand, because Dominic Calvert-Lewin's getting on the end of that ball. If bloody God's on the pitch, never mind Virgil van Dijk, even though the media like to, say he's that type of player, because he leaped above everybody and he had the willingness and he wanted to score. And it was an unbelievable goal, and it added to his list of fantastic goals that season. And that's the improvement we've seen from Dom. And that's where I talk about praising the players as well as praising the manager, because it is very easy to sit down and go, look at what Ancelotti's done with this Everton team. He's improved everybody currently at the club and he's brought in quality, and he has, and that's absolutely right, and that is completely right, and that's a fair statement. But it's also ultimately down to the players, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin had went away in that lockdown period. He'd worked on himself, he'd come back. We weren't great after it. In the last 9 games of the season we were quite poor. He didn't get many an opportunity, so he went away again, worked on himself again, and made sure that if one cross come into the box, he was on the end of it and he was scoring. Made sure that if he didn't... I remember reading an interview, a quote from Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and he said he used to leave a football pitch. If you're enjoying this stream, by the way, please do hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to share the stream as well. If you're new, would really, really appreciate it. We will get back into the live comments in a moment. Really, really do appreciate all of the support. It's absolutely fantastic. But I remember reading an interview or a segment from Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and he said something along the lines of, I used to leave the pitch, and if I'd put in a good shift, if I'd worked hard, I'd think, you know what, I'm satisfied with that. I'm happy with that. I've worked hard. I've put in a good shift. I've got myself about. And it wasn't really about whether he'd scored or whether, he'd contributed. If we'd won and he'd worked hard, he was happy. Now he's coming off the pitch, and if he hasn't scored, he's not satisfied. If he hasn't got on the end of something and put it in the back of the net, he's not satisfied. And that's what we've seen from Dominic Calvert-Lewin this season. At the back end of last season, he done it as well. Since Carlo Ancelotti has been at Everton, Dom had a really good start to last season, and he was scoring goals, and he was getting on the end of things, and he was quite, he was doing well. He was improved. He was much more improved, but he still had his critics, and rightly so, because he wasn't getting in the right areas. He wasn't scoring enough tap-ins. He wasn't scoring enough where it comes off the bar and it hits him. And since Carlo Ancelotti has come in, that's something that we've seen an awful lot more. And I don't just attribute this to Dom and Carlo, I attribute it to Duncan Ferguson as well. Because I think Duncan Ferguson's worked an awful lot with Dominic Calvert-Lewin in this sense, is that you don't always have to score a worldie. You don't always have to score a dominating header in the air. If a ball comes off somebody's arse, you just need to make sure it hits you and it goes into the back of the net. If a ball's flashed along the goal line, you just need to make sure that you slide with your hands in the air and it basically touches any part of your body but your arm and it goes in. They're the goals that matter. They're the goals that count. They're the goals that you look back at the end of the season and you think, you know what? That was massively important. That's what we've seen more of from Dom this season. Yes, he scored outstanding goals. The one against West Ham, the first one, was unbelievable. The header against Liverpool was brilliant. The header against Tottenham was fantastic. But we've also seen him score goals against West Brom, against Brighton, against Fulham, where balls have just simply been fizzed into the area, be it from Luca Dean or Richarlison, and Dom has just been there to basically allow it to hit him. Yes, some of the times he's got a good connection on it, but on a number of occasions, the ball has basically just hit Dominic Calvert-Lewin and gone in. And that is exactly what we want. Exactly what we want. That's what we've been crying out for Dom to bring to this Everton team. Not only is the work rate, not only is the fight, not only is the unbelievable ability in the air, but being in the right place at the right time. Doing your work in those areas. Having a ball come off your knee and go in on the goal line. Stealing goals from players. Romelu Lukaku used to do it every single week and he wasn't arsed. And he'd openly come out and say, I am not arsed. If that ball is anywhere near me. He started to do it with Tom Davies for that famous goal against Manchester City where Tom Davies had taken everybody on, stuck Yaya Toure on his arse and chipped it over. I think it was Claudio Bravo at the time. Romelu Lukaku tried to steal it and ultimately he didn't get his foot on the ball, and I think there'd have been a lot of angry Evertonians if he did, certainly Tom Davies. But Rom had actively come out on a number of occasions and gone, if that ball's coming anywhere near me and I'm onside, I'm trying to get my foot on it because I want the goals. I want to score. I want to be the goal scorer at the end of the season. And some had determined that as selfish, but some had determined that as a hunger, and I determined that as a hunger to score. And that's a massive mentality shift in Dominic Calvert-Lewin, as he's gone from being satisfied with working hard to not being satisfied unless he's on the score sheet. As well as that, he's improved his ability in the air, he's improved his ability on the floor, and he's improved his ability in working in the right areas, scoring those tap-ins, having the ball come off his arse on the line, having the ball fall to him from a corner and him tap it in. That's where we need Dominic Calvert-Lewin being, and that's what we want to see, and that's what he's done an awful lot more of. Getting his goals in the right areas, he's been excellent at doing that. Scoring in big games as well. You literally, you can't fault Dominic Calvert-Lewin in terms of being a big game player. That's been a massive criticism as a lot of Evertonians since, well, for a lot of Everton players since I was born practically. We don't have enough players who turn up in big games. You can't say that about Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Tottenham away, hadn't won there for 12 years. He steps up with the winning goal. Merseyside derby, he steps up with the equaliser. Fantastic header, cool as you like. He scored against Arsenal at the Emirates towards the back end of last season. A fantastic bicycle kick within the opening couple of minutes. He scored a fantastic goal against Newcastle away from home when we were at a really tough period in the season. He got a connection on the ball against Arsenal at Goodison Park. Okay, come off Rob Holding and it was determined an own goal, but Dom flicked it onto him. He won the penalty against Chelsea. He's doing this in big games. He's a big game player, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. You could never say that he doesn't turn up when it matters, because he does. He absolutely turns up when it matters. And the best thing about Dominic Calvert-Lewin is he's still got room to improve. He's still got a lot to improve on. He still needs to do better. He needs to improve on his work in front of goal, one-on-one with goalkeepers. He needs to improve on, like I said, his play when he's got the ball at his feet and he has to create. He's not a striker that's going to pick the ball up on the halfway line and turn and run and beat 6 players and slot it. And that's why it was very frustrating when he used to do a lot of his work outside the area, because you knew he wasn't going to pick it up and take everybody on and score. He was going to pick it up and either pass it to somebody else, they were going to move forward, and then he wasn't going to be in the box to receive the cross. So he needs to work on that. He needs to work on being able to pick the ball up on his own, take 3 or 4 or 5 players on and slot it. But that's a very difficult task, and I honestly, hand on heart, and you can disagree with this as much as you like, I honestly think if Dominic Calvert-Lewin can do that and can learn how to do that and can start bossing players in the middle of the park, beating 5 or 6 men and then improving his ability in front of goalkeeper and slotting one-on-one, I think he's one of the best strikers in world football, because he's the complete striker then. He's got the work rate, he's got the ability in the air, he's got the willingness to be in the right areas at the right time, he's got the right mentality, and he's then got the ability to take players on and score out of nowhere, which I don't think he's got at the moment, and that's what he needs to improve on. And that brings to me to my last point about Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He's got an unmatched work rate and he's constantly improving. I don't think there's been a season since he's been at Everton Football Club where he hasn't beat his goal tally from the previous season, which just shows that he's getting better and better and better. Carlo Ancelotti come out at some point in the first couple of weeks of the season and said he expects Dominic Calvert-Lewin to score 20 goals this season, everybody sort of went, wow, 20, that's going to be some task. Scored 11 in the first 9 games of the season. Without bother. Scored 2 hat-tricks already this season. Who was the last Everton player to score 2 hat-tricks in a single season? Romelu Lukaku scored 1 against Young Boys, I think, in the Europa League a few years back. Who was the last Everton player? It might well have been Rom, but if you know that, if you want for your statistics, who was the last Everton player to score 2 hat-tricks in a single season? I can't remember. I honestly can't remember. Dominic Calvert-Lewin's done it within the first couple of weeks of the season so far. Done it against the West Ham side that are proven to be quite solid now. Again, it just shows the improvements that Dom's made, and I think you cannot simply have this conversation without Dom's name being thrown into the hat because he's been exceptional. He's in a little bit of a bad run of form at the moment, or I don't want to say he's in a bad run of form, but he's struggling to get goals. I don't particularly think that's down to Dom, to be perfectly honest with you. I think that is attributed to the fact that the team is struggling to create at the moment. But look, when he comes back, just launch me pen on the floor. When he comes back from his injury, when we've got Luka Dean, Richarlison, James Rodriguez, Alan in the same team with Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and we've got that creativity back, I don't think Dom struggles to score goals whatsoever. So there you go. They are my thoughts on why Dominic Calvert-Lewin may be Everton's most improved player this season. Let me know your thoughts on them. If you're enjoying, please do leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe as well. Let's get back into the live comments before we talk about somebody else. Loads of comments. Look, a big thanks to everybody for getting involved. There's absolutely loads of comments today, so I really do appreciate it. Honestly, it means a lot. Noah says the only concern is once he's in his prime, dozens of teams will go out and try and sign him. They will. Of course they will, but that's what happens when you have really good players, is that other teams want to sign them. But let's say, for example, maybe not this season, but next season Everton finish in a Champions League place. Let's say, for example, Everton finish in a Europa League place this season, and Carlo Ancelotti turns round to Dom and says, look, with you in our team, bring in a couple of more, couple of better players for the squad, we can finish in this Champions League place. Look at how close we've come this season. Then Dom might say, you know what, yeah, I'll stick it out. You've given me a lot of trust. You've given me a lot of faith. I'll stick it out and I'll continue. And I think Dom's the type of player to do that, to be honest with you. Toffee Blue Blood Army says we'll be winning trophies by then. Noah says let's hope so. Eugene's talking about Odegaard. I don't know, to be honest, I don't know. Toffee Blue Blood says we need to start winning trophies now to keep players. Noah says, yeah, Richie wants UEFA Champions League next season or he's out. Again, well, we need to be able to ultimately show an improvement to the likes of Richarlison, Luka Dean, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I don't think he's out either. I think look, Richarlison deserves to be playing, even on bad form at the moment. I don't think anybody can disagree with over the last 2 years Richarlison deserving to play Champions League football. Ewan says Everton needs a good FA Cup run. Toffee Blue Blood said Keane's therapist is what helped him and Pickford 100%. Daz That Killer says hello. Luke says Pickford is so much better than he was last season. Daz That Killer says Zapata 30 million, I'd take that in the summer. Sombrero Numero Uno says Keane and Mina partnership should definitely continue. I agree. Noah says at first I was really not sure about Dom, but players want to impress. Carlo, spot on. Sombrero says Zapata 30 million is too much for a backup who can only play in one position. Fair enough. Toffee Blue Blood says top 4 and players will stay 100%. Should go for top 4 anything unless it's a season failed. Isn't it mad that this time, well, not this time last season, but sort of the beginning of December last season, we were sitting here saying let's just survive in the Premier League, and now we're sitting here just over 12 months later saying if we don't finish in the top 4 it's a failed season. I don't think it is a failed season if we don't finish in the top 4 personally, but again, that's just opinion based. Cal says, look how much hype Stones gets and Keane is clear of him. I like John Stones though, I do, but Michael Keane has been excellent. That's the Killer says, who said Zapata would be a backup? Somebody says DCL says, Noah says I really like Keane's personality, he's very strong on the ball. Toffee Blue Blood says Stones is good how he played for us. And Cal says if John Stones or Van Dijk made that pass versus West Ham, the media would go mad. It was an excellent pass, mate. It was an absolutely excellent pass. Anyway, let's get on to the third player that I've got written down. Only got a couple of more written down. And then we will get into the live comments and take some suggestions before we finish up. Alex Iwobi. Now, I don't think Alex Iwobi is as in with a shout as the other two, because I think the other two have shown it on a more consistent level, certainly throughout the longevity of this season so far. I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin's been excellent this season. I think Michael Keane's been excellent this season. I think Alex Iwobi has been excellent for the last couple of weeks, and that might spring the discussion as to say, well, even more so, because Dom showed improvements last season, Michael Keane showed improvements last season, whereas Alex Iwobi has shown improvements this season, and that must mean he's the most improved player this season. But like I said, that's not really how we're working it. We're doing it about Ancelotti, really. But Alex Iwobi, look, recently has been very, very, very solid. Started to play with confidence now. Started to play with a lot more confidence. He's a very strong runner on the ball. He's very physical. He moves forward fast. And what Alex Iwobi showed against Wolves was something that he's been criticised for, and I'm not going to let him get away with it because I still think he needs to improve on his final product. But he showed that there's something in there. There's a player in there with Alex Iwobi, and if you can get that player out, he is a top talent. And that goal against Wolves showed that. It was an absolutely exceptional finish by Alex Iwobi, an absolutely exceptional finish. It was brilliantly well taken. It was set up perfectly by Luca Dean, but there was still an awful lot of work to do. It wasn't like it was flashed across the box and he just had to put his foot on it, which, by the way, all count, as we've just spoken about with Dom. It wasn't like that though. It was flashed back and he had an awful lot of work to do to guide that ball into the bottom corner, and he did it perfectly. It was an absolutely fantastic finish. And like I said, more so than the other two, is Alex Iwobi started this season under a lot of criticism. He couldn't get any real consistency. He played right wing back against Fulham, which he played really, really well, but then I think he went to left wing back the game after, and he really struggled because he can't play on the left. He's played at left wing, he's played at right wing, and he hasn't really had that consistency that maybe he's needed, or that run of games in the team. And what James Rodriguez's injury done for Alex Iwobi was it meant that he was getting a consistent run of games in the team, and he was getting a consistent run at right wing or right midfield, whatever you want to call it. And I think that's massively, massively helped Alex Iwobi. And ultimately, it's also massively helped Everton, because it allowed Carlo Ancelotti to say to James, look, you can have another couple of weeks resting here. You don't need to be rushed back because Alex Iwobi's doing a decent enough job. Not saying that, Alex Iwobi's better than James or should be in there over James, but at that period a couple of weeks ago, Carlo Ancelotti will have looked at James and gone, you can have an extra 2 weeks off here to, get your fitness back up and to make sure that you're ready to start again, because Alex Iwobi's doing well, so there's no need to rush you back. Like I said, he's playing with a lot more confidence. His goal against Wolves showed that he's improving. Certainly that final product that we've been talking about, he is improving. Does he need to get better? Absolutely. But one thing I've been really impressed with Alex Iwobi at the moment is his work rate. He seems to really have that mentality to improve. He wants to do better. He wants to do more. He wants to run with the ball. He's not playing like he was at times last season where he looked scared to get on the ball. He didn't want the ball. He didn't want to play it. He didn't want to be involved. He just sort of wanted to run around a little bit, and whenever he got it, he sort of panicked. He now seems a lot more confident on the ball. When he picks it up, he's not just passing it to anyone and anybody and losing the ball. He's not passing it back. He's not rushing his decision. He's picking it up and he's sort of thinking, right, I'm going to drive into the middle here and I'm going to take you on, or I'm going to beat you for pace, or I'm going to beat you for strength. He's a very, very strong runner, Alex Iwobi. I like Alex Iwobi. I think he's a good footballer. I really, really do. He's a strong runner with the ball, and he's very, like I said, he's quite fast. So if Alex Iwobi is running at most Premier League defenders, then they're going to have a hard time putting up with him. They really, really are. Because he's big, he's strong, he's got quick feet, very, very quick feet, and he gets himself in some good areas. Now, obviously, like the other two players that were spoken about, he's got improvements to make. He's not the finished article, probably more so than the other two players, because there have been a couple of occasions where he's gotten to the right areas, and be it a shot, he had another chance against Wolves just after he'd scored, where James played a beautiful ball in, and he had a shot and it was straight into the keeper, albeit on a couple of occasions where he's moulded his way into good areas and he's just made the wrong decision. Be it a pass, be it an effort, be it a cross, he's just made the wrong decision. So he definitely does need to improve on that. But I feel like it's one step at a time with Alex Iwobi, and the one step at a time approach is that a year ago you couldn't get a tune out of him. You could not get a performance out of him whatsoever, and it was almost to the point where, again, like I said, fans were genuinely sitting there saying, sell him, move him on, he's not good enough, he's not worth it. And I'm not going to sit here and say Alex Iwobi's the best thing since sliced bread and now he's proved himself, because he hasn't yet. But if he continues in this vein of form and he continues to improve and he continues to show his willingness to beat players, show his willingness to take players on, show his willingness to get down the pitch, up and down the pitch, and his defensive work rate as well, then I think he really can become a fan favourite. I also don't think we've seen Alex Iwobi in his best position to this day, to be honest. I think he's best as a number 10, but obviously we don't play with a number 10 anymore, so we're probably unlikely to see that from Alex Iwobi. But he's improved massively, and he's definitely in with a shout, because like I said, he's been fantastic so far this season. Well, so far in the last couple of weeks or so anyway, and like I said, he's a strong, powerful runner. He's looking more confident. His final product, although it needs to be improved, we saw it against Wolves what he can do, and he is benefiting, much like Michael Keane, much like Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He's benefiting from having that consistent run of games in the same position and knowing what he needs to do week in, week out. I've always said this about football, and I'm not Carlo Ancelotti, so I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, we should never change the team around, this, that and the other. I'm not a footballer manager. There's reasons for that. It's because I don't know even a percentage of what these managers know. But I've always thought, if you're a player and you're going into training on a Monday and you're sitting in training and you're working at Finch Farm or whatever, and you're thinking, right, okay, I'm going to work on defending here today, or I'm going to work on my positioning or my ability on the ball. But in the back of your mind, you're sort of thinking, or maybe not even in the back of your mind, in the front of your mind, you're thinking, well, I don't really know where I'm going to play at the weekend. I might play centre half. I might play left back. I might play right back. I mightn't be in the team. I might, another player might be thinking I might play on the wing, on the right wing, which I prefer. I might play on the left wing. I might play at left wing back. And I know Carlo Ancelotti has done that on a number of occasions, and that's when it's needed to be done. But what I think with what Carlo has done is, instead of just having the players work on a base level at what they usually do, and then on a Friday say, right, tomorrow you're playing left wing back, when this player's been working on how to improve as a right winger all week. I think when Carlo has had to make a change, be it Godfrey at left back, be it Iwobi at right wing back, he said to that player at the start of the week, right, just so you know, you're going to play in this position this week. So for just this week, we're going to work on how you can put in a base level decent performance in that position, and just focus on that, because in the next couple of weeks, you'll be back to your regular position. And I'm not saying Marco Silva didn't used to do that, by the way, because again, like I said, I don't know, but it just seems like when Carlo has had to change the position of these players are putting in better performances than they were previously. But like I said, I've always thought, surely if a player knows on a Monday night, on a Monday afternoon, on a Tuesday afternoon, on a Wednesday morning, they know all throughout training for that week that on the weekend they're going to be playing at right centre-back and they're going to be playing next to Yeti Mina, then they know what to work on. They know what they need to improve on. They know what they need to say to their partner next to them, right, you need to improve on this and I'll improve on that, rather than not really knowing. But yeah, that's just my opinion. Anyway, that's my thoughts on Alex Iwobi. Definitely in with a shout. I want to talk about Yeti Mina before we finish up as well. We're going to get into the live comments. Toffee Blue Blood says, looking at other teams, they're not better than us. It would be a fail. Fair enough. I think talking about top four there. Raymond says Marco Silva was lost. He didn't have a clue. There you go. Can't really disagree with that, with what we've seen, can we? Conding says Silva was just shit. Conding says no one thought we would get relegated last December. I'm not gonna lie to you, mate. I did. When we lost to Norwich and we were only a point above the relegation zone, and it looked like at that time Marco Silva wasn't going to get sacked, I thought we are in serious shit here. Toffee Blue Blood says lost that top goal scorer in the league spot. He did, yeah, because he's not scored in a few yet. He did, but again, he can easily get that back. If Dom had taken penalties for Everton, he'd be well up there at the end of the season, even with a run of a couple of games where he hasn't scored. Tosh Blue says, looking at others. Conding says, I just want the good players to stay in the shit ones. That's the basis of football, isn't it, really? The best players stay and the crap ones go. If you're enjoying, by the way, please do hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well. Really, really do appreciate it. Share the stream as well. That would mean a great deal to me. Conding says, how is he on a bad run of form? Created pens, won every header. I don't necessarily mean a bad run of form. That's probably the wrong word to use. What I mean is, he hasn't scored in a couple. So I think Dom will be disappointed at the moment in the fact that he hasn't scored in a couple of games. It's not a bad run of form, because he hasn't put a bad performance in, because he's working hard, he's winning headers, like you said, he's winning penalties. I just think because he hasn't scored in a couple, he may feel a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Underwhelmed with himself. I'm not underwhelmed with him, obviously. Wayne says, he is the most complete striker in the world, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. There you go. Toffee Blue Blood says, DCL ain't no Lukaku. Lukaku could take on 3 defenders with the ball at his feet. Exactly. And DCL needs to work on being able to do that. And if he can do that, like I said before, I think he is one of the best strikers in world football. But he needs to work on that. And I've got every belief that Dominic Calvert-Lewin can work on doing that. Because 2 years ago, if you'd have said to me, Dominic Calvert-Lewin's going to have a leap like Cristiano Ronaldo and he's basically going to score every header that he leaps for, I'd say he's not. Because he's tall, but he doesn't have that presence. He's not dominating in the air. Now he is. So I've got every trust and belief that Dom will make those adjustments. Can't think of it. Says DCL is one of the best strikers in the world. He does everything. I agree, mate, completely. Toffee Blue Blood says, first or second, if not, our players have bottled it. It's on a plate. Going to be a tough ask, that. Union says, where do you think Everton will finish in the Premier League? I think 5th. I think 5th as well, mate, to be honest. But look, the way the league is at the moment, you never know. Sophie Blueblood says Balassi is a thief. Davis is what's needed. Conningham says that goal against City from Davis made his career. Conningham says we made what Rom is, Stones is, and Barkley is, and they all couldn't wait to leave. I'd sell Holgate personally. You could get a good fee for him, and he's not good enough, in my opinion. That's fair enough. I like Mason Holgate. I think he's a decent player, and I think he's a very good player to have, but that's fair enough. Tommy Blue says DCL wouldn't leave. We stuck with him and made him what he is today. He also says we're going to win the league. 100% got me bet on it. Conningham City will be after DCL to replace Aguero. Wouldn't surprise me, mate. Jab says I don't think DCL is injured. I think he's given time to prevent injury. Potentially, mate. Potentially. Conningham says we have a full 11 that could win the league. I think we do, but that full 11 isn't going to stay fit for an entire season, and we've seen that. Toffee Blue Blood says, we should start scoring now. Conningham says, love how you pure go in on Gylfi and let Davis off the hook. Gylfi is shite, but Davis is even worse. At least Gylfi is a tiny goal threat. I don't, because I've not once said Tom Davis is an absolutely unbelievable footballer. I've just said, if Tom Davis doesn't play, who else plays in there? And I think Gylfi's done okay recently. I do think he's done okay recently. Nobody can convince me that Gylfi Sigurdsson didn't struggle against Wolves, because that's not his natural position, and I don't blame him for struggling. He's not a striker. He's not a false 9. He worked hard, but he wasn't a threat, was he? But that's not his fault. Gylfi's done okay recently. Wim says Dunk wasn't the striking coach because Marco Silva appointed Boa Morte. Well, yeah, there you go. Maybe Dunk sort of took Dom aside himself behind the back of... Not behind the back, but sort of on the side and said, look, I'm going to work with you a little bit more. And Toffee Blueblood says DCL is likely to get injured. Well, hopefully we can prevent that, like I said. We've had a couple of weeks off now, so hopefully Dom can return to fitness and prevent further injuries. One other player I want to talk about before we finish up, again, more so in the Alex Iwobi argument, is specific to this season, is Yeti Mina. I know can't think of another name is a massive fan of Yeti Mina, and that's fair enough. I think Yeti Mina has massively improved this season for quite similar reasons as to why I think Michael Keane's improved, to be honest with you, because he's had that consistency, because he knows where he's playing, he knows who he's playing next to, and he ultimately knows the strengths of the player that he's playing next to. It's not a case of, right, okay, I don't know if I'm playing next to Mason Holgate this week, I don't know if I'm playing next to Michael Keane this week. He knows he's playing next to Michael Keane every week. He knows what Michael Keane's good at, he knows what he's good at, and he knows what they both need to improve at. He's making less mistakes, he's looking more comfortable on the ball, and he's looking like a centre-back who you can sort of trust. Yes, he does need to improve on certain things, and I think his clearances and turning his back when opposition players are shooting, I think he needs to improve on, but he's looked an awful lot better recently, and I think Yeti Mina is definitely in with a shout for most improved player, certainly this season. I think he still needs to do that on a more consistent basis for me, like Michael Keane has done. But I do think he gets a little bit of stick, Yeti Mina, maybe unnecessary stick sometimes. When we don't play well, he is one of the first players who people go to criticise. But look, he's done really well recently. Again, he come on, I think he come on against Rotherham in the last sort of 10 or 15 minutes, and he just completely, just absolutely completely... just quieting the game down for everybody, just made sure that we didn't give anything stupid away, we didn't do anything silly defensively. He was just a big unit, and he got rid of everyone, he worked hard, and that's what you need to see more of from Yeti Mina. Less of the trying to do the outstanding and more just do the simplistic bits. And when he does the simplistic bits, I think he's a very good defender, and I think he is definitely in with a shout, because ultimately, I think certainly recently he's been very, very solid. And like I said, I do think he's benefiting from having that partnership next to Michael Keane. That ultimately is working at the moment, and is our centre-back partnership, and will be our centre-back partnership for a long time for me, because they work. And like I said, I think Yeti Mina deserves a special shout-out as well. Toffee Blue Blood says Sigurdsson is getting better. He's doing alright. William says, isn't that a song? Sigurdsson is getting better all the time. Wayne says, any news on new signings in and out loan for Sims? Yeah, Ellis Sims has gone to Blackpool for the rest of the season. That's about it for the moment. There's rumours. Obviously, there's still rumours about Joshua Zirkzee. We're going to cover all of them on Friday's weekly news roundup. But nothing solid, I don't think, at the moment. William says, Phil. So yeah, look, that rounds it up. Listen, I've picked out 4 players there who could potentially be, put down as Everton's most improved player so far this season. I'm gonna say my most improved player is Michael Keane. On the pure basis is that I expected Dom to get better. I expected Dom to become the player that he is today, because I think he's always shown that work rate. He's always shown that fight. He's always shown that determined mentality that he's got. He showed that passion, and he's also at times, even prior to the last season or so, he showed his ability, but just not on a consistent level. Whereas Michael Keane, they did get to a point where I felt Michael Keane didn't have a future at Everton, and he's completely flipped that on his head. So I'm going with Michael Keane. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. If you're watching live, a massive thank you to everybody for getting involved. Really, really do appreciate it. Let me know your thoughts in the live comments. If you're watching the YouTube video, leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. But like I said, for me, all of the improvements of the players so far, not only attributed down to Carlo Ancelotti being the manager that he is and making the improvements to the team, they're down to the players wanting to improve, and ultimately they're down to the players understanding, right, okay, I know where I'm going to play, I know who I'm going to play next to, and I know what I need to improve on. So, there you go. That is it for today's live stream. If you have enjoyed it, please do hit that like button. It does only take a second. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe as well. We will be back on Friday with the game preview ahead of Sunday's FA Cup fixture against Sheffield Wednesday. And then, of course, we'll have the weekly news roundup as well. So don't forget to check that one out. It would mean a great deal to me. Everton now says, Cam, mate, can you check your Twitter DMs? I will do in a second, mate. And Wayne says, have a good week, Cam. Keen for me. Don't enjoy eating humble pie. Well, don't mind actually no pie with Davis though. He'll always be shit. There you go. I agree, mate. It's Michael Keane for me as well. Massive thank you to everybody for watching. Wayne says, take care, guys. Thank you very much to you too, mate. If you have enjoyed it, please do hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you are new as well. Really do appreciate all of the support. Wayne says, peace, Blues. Cheers, Wayne. We'll be back on Friday with another live stream game preview for the game against Sheffield Wednesday, and then of course the weekly news roundup as well. Big thanks for watching. Leave a like if you've enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you soon.